Welcome back. This is the Gunny, and I am sitting in for the great Scott Beason. He's out enjoying himself, and I'm sitting here struggling, looking at the computer screen, trying to read, trying to listen to music, listening to LT. It's my first time on the radio, as you can probably tell, but at least I won't have to talk too much today because we got a special guest. He's a special friend of mine, and I'm so excited to be here and have this opportunity to bring Mark Meckler on. Are you on, Mark?
I am here, sir.
Awesome. Mark Meckler is the Chief Executive Officer of the Convention of States, which is an organization, and he'll definitely tell us more about it. But the bottom line, it is a massive, great movement of grassroots people that care about our country, understand that we have difficulties we got to handle, and we got a solution that's bigger than the problem. Mark, welcome so much to the show. We're glad to have you here.
Oh, Gunny, anything for you. It's good to be with you.
Well, we were talking this morning, we're talking about, is America going downhill like the snowball from hell that good old Merle Haggard tells us? And we talk to people all the time, and it just seems like people they have no hope or no faith, or they don't know what to do. And I'm like, there is something we can do, and it's called Convention of States. Now, Convention of States resolution itself has passed in Alabama, but that doesn't mean that we just give up. Matter of fact, it's the first step. And, Mark, can you give us more about the organization and how we can get involved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, Gunny, I got to say, when people have no hope or no faith, I just don't buy that, not only in the nation, but we've got God, and so we always have hope and we've got faith. And then we got to have a plan, and I think there is a plan for saving the nation in the idea of a Convention of States. So Article 5 of the Constitution contains the provisions that allow us to amend the Constitution if we think it's necessary. And the founders knew it was going to be necessary. That's why they put this in the Constitution. I know a lot of people, they have a panic attack when you say amend the Constitution, but the founders told us this, and specifically they told us that you and I, the folks in the states, were going to have to do this. And on September 15, 1787, Colonel George Mason of Virginia stood up. This is 2 days before the end of convention, and he said, hey, we've got a fundamental problem here. We've given the power to Congress to propose amendments, but not to the people acting through the states. And then he asked, are we that naive? Are we that dumb that we actually believe that a federal government that becomes a tyranny would ever propose amendments to restrain its own tyranny? Now, I wish we had video, Gunny, because I'm pretty sure they all laughed. I think it was.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Right? Of course, because what tyrant has ever restrained himself?
Right.
That's just never happened. And so we know that they probably did laugh because Madison's notes say in Latin, two tiny Latin abbreviations. They say nin com, which is short for no comment or no debate. So they didn't debate this. They all said, yeah, that's right. And then unanimously they put in the second clause of Article 5, and that second clause gives you and me the power to do this, to call a convention of states, to propose amendments. And as you can hear from what Mason said, the purpose was specifically to restrain federal tyranny. We all agree at this point that we've got federal tyranny. Excuse me, we've all seen they won't do anything to restrain it. So we're going to have to do that.
Well, I absolutely agree with you. But some people still believe in the fact of the vote, right? That we're just not voting the right people in to these positions that are going to be honest and follow that natural law that we're talking about, loving your neighbors and your brothers and, doing the things that are necessary to have a, quote, good, safe, liberty country. So people say, we just got to vote the right people in. Why do we got to do this Article 5 thing? Why can't we just change them all? Just vote them out, put the right people in.
Well, look, I think, and I might have a slightly different opinion. I think that oftentimes we do put the right people in. And I could point back to the Tea Party movement of 2010, which I was one of the leaders of, and we had the biggest swing class in the history of Congress since 1938. In other words, more Democrats thrown out, Republicans put in, had a Republican majority. We thought that this was going to change everything. And a lot of those folks, in my opinion, I knew a lot of them personally, were really good folks. They believed in the same things that you and I believed in. And then they got to Washington, D.C. And, we joke the Potomac, are they drinking from the Potomac? And the reality is they're actually like in a hot tub that's full of all the corruption and horrible stuff in D.C.
Right.
And the problem is that they get co-opted by D.C. because the system is broken. And so you can put as many good people as you like into a bad system. And as long as we leave the system broken, then there's nothing we can do. You're going to get a bad result.
Absolutely. So by going and doing a convention of states, the objective is this, twofold, really. It's going to be great to get to the convention, but that's just a piece of this. It's just a part of it. That's the reason we have to make sure, specifically here in Alabama, that it doesn't get rescinded. And we got to make sure that we're working with our legislators here to ensure that we still have that resolution to be able to attend that convention. And Mark, the way I look at it is, the process of us getting there is starting to wake up a lot of these politicians and a lot of these people going, this could actually possibly happen. That's part of this grassroots movement, is getting our legislators in the states and the federal legislators more information, understanding that we're moving.
Yeah, and I think, I want to back up a little, Gunny, if I could, because I know you might have some listeners that don't know what this is all about. And basically what I want people to understand is Article 5 is how we amend the Constitution. It takes 34 states to call a convention. The way they do it is they pass a resolution, as you've been talking about. That has to pass through both houses of the state legislature. Y'all have done that in your state, as you've mentioned. And once it passes through 34 states, then the convention is called. And then once you get into convention, the states will each send delegates to that, or commissioners to that convention. Each state can send as many commissioners as they like, but each state gets one vote. Maine gets one vote. Texas gets one vote. Doesn't matter the size of the state. When 26 states agree on proposed amendments, then those amendments go out to the states for ratification. It takes 38 states to ratify any amendment before it becomes part of the Constitution. So that process is really important. And then along the way, one of the things that's going on, and you mentioned this, Gunny, is we're building the largest self-governing grassroots army in American history. These are folks that are being trained up on how the process works, what our Constitution is about, how to lobby their legislature, how to be influential in their legislature, and all the way down into local politics. And we participate in school boards, we participate in city councils and county boards. So we're building up a very muscular army of self-governing grassroots activists all over the country.
Yeah, that's the key. That's the key word. And when I explain convention of state, I do it the same way that you taught us, is we kind of give them an overview of what it is. But what really is happening is we're energizing citizens. We're giving them the tools and the power, people power, to actually make a difference and influence in their community. We've had people that are part of the Convention of States that have gotten elected into their legislation within the state that they're in. And they were started off in Convention of States and learned about the Constitution and learned about how to get involved. And local, we got people in city school boards that are part of the Convention of States. So what it is it's not just getting to this convention. That's a goal. That's a goal we want to go to. But it's more of us bringing our citizens together and working the issues of everyday life in America.
Yeah, I agree with that. And so the reason people are initially attracted to the idea of a convention of states, and it's important, which is we got to get our hands around the neck of the federal government. We got to shove it back in the constitutional box. This is the systemic fix I was talking about. We have to impose some sort of term limits on the federal government, not just Congress, honestly, but staffers, bureaucrats, what we call the deep state, even the federal courts. We have to impose some kind of fiscal restraints on the federal government, like a balanced budget amendment, tax caps, and spending caps. And ultimately, we have to take power away from the federal government and tell them things like, you can't be involved in education or energy or healthcare or environment. These are things the federal government was never meant to be involved in. And so that's the purpose of calling a convention and proposing amendments. But along the way, as you said, citizens figure out, hey, I have some power. I can be involved in this. A great example, Gunny, is in Virginia. Everybody knows about the Virginia election. They took what everybody thought was a blue state and started to turn it back red. All the statewide officers ended up being Republicans, so it's a red wave. And their House of Representatives slipped. One of the members that got elected to the House of Representatives that involved that flip was from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and she was a COS activist. And through her network in COS, through all the people she had met, through learning about how the system works, she decided to run. And by the way, that House now has a one-seat majority Republican. She's that one seat, and she was a COS activist.
Awesome, Mark. This is what the power of the people is. This to me is the only solution that we have to be able to right the federal government, and what's real neat is right the people, get them back in the foundation of what the country stands for. We're going to take a quick break. Don't go away, Mark, and we'll bring you right back. Welcome back. This is the Gunny, and I am sitting in for Scott Beason. He is out, but I have a very special guest here with us today. Mark Meckler is the Chief Executive Officer of the Convention of States Movement in America. He is a friend, a godly man. I'm so blessed to be part of his life, and his functions of just his leadership and his abilities is amazing. So welcome back, Mark.
Good to be with you, Gunny.
So we left basically talking about how people get involved, and you were describing a lady in Virginia that actually, I guess she got elected into the legislation of Virginia through Convention of States, or working with Convention of States.
Yeah, that was really her first major exposure to politics. She learned how the system works. She learned how to go to Virginia legislature and talk to legislators. She saw how the whole thing works. She got excited about being engaged in politics. And then when it came time, she did what I think a lot of great patriots need to do. She looked in the mirror and said, well, if I don't run, who's going to run? Right? If not me, then who? If not now, then when? And she stood up and decided to run, and she's now in that legislature. That legislature, the House has a one-seat majority to Republicans, so you could say she's the one who turned the tide in the Virginia legislature. And that's really what we're looking to do. It's not enough to sign a petition. It's not enough to just be educated about this stuff. Certainly not enough just to yell at your radio or your television in frustration. You got to do something, and that's what Convention of States is all about.
It's energizing us. It reminds me of my dad kind of teaching me a lesson when something was wrong and how to fix that. And once you kind of get the idea of how to do that, you actually get satisfaction out of it. And that's what I get with Convention of States, is I feel in my heart I'm actually doing something towards making sure that America is not rolling down this hill. We're trying to stop the snowball by doing Convention of States.
That is super important, Gunny. And one of the things that in founding this organization that was so important to me was that we were engaging people in useful activity that could actually lead to meaningful change.
Right.
And one of the things that frustrates me about politics generally, grassroots organizations, other organizations, is they'll tell you things like, well, call your congressman.
Right.
And frankly, that doesn't make any difference. Your congressman doesn't care if you call them. They don't even care if they get hundreds of calls. I go, you and I, we've got interns in our program. Some of them go work on Capitol Hill, and their first job, generally speaking, is just answering the phones. And they'll tell you that the congressman has no idea about the calls coming in. They don't care about the calls coming in. They don't pay attention. So to me, that's engaging people in meaningless activity that isn't going to cause real change. And I don't want to do that. And so our grassroots are involved in activities that actually have the ability to lead to meaningful change. And what you're talking about, what your dad taught you, that's a very empowering thing. I hate to use the word empower. It's so cliche these days. But when you realize that you can actually be responsible for things, and things can change and things can be better because of your efforts, that is a very empowering thing.
It is. It absolutely is. And the wonderful part about this, Mark, is we're seeing it. It's not like an imaginary system that's being put in place and just thinking, well, maybe it's going to work. We're watching it. We're seeing it grow and build, and we're seeing the fruits of what's happening in the legislations within the states and the cities and so forth. We're seeing people working really hard, dedicated. And these are volunteers, millions of volunteers that are helping us out. So
yeah, and Gunny, I want people to understand that, for example, in your state where the legislation, the resolution's already passed, what our grassroots do is they stay engaged. They make sure that the resolution doesn't get rescinded. They make sure that each year the new legislators know about Convention of States and what it is. Then they're preparing, because eventually there's going to be a convention. I expect that in the next couple of years we're going to get to that magic number of 34, and it's going to be up to the Convention of States activists to make sure that your state sends the right commissioners to that convention. It's going to be up to your grassroots activists there in your state to make sure that the right kind of resolutions come out of that convention, and ultimately when they go back to the states for ratification, that they get ratified. And along the way, in my opinion, there's something even more important going on, and that is your grassroots activists in that state are heavily engaged in the legislature on a day-to-day basis. What are they doing? Not necessarily Convention of States. They're doing what they think is important. For example, they're fighting for life. They're fighting for pro-life issues. They're fighting for gun rights and, constitutional carry and Second Amendment issues. They're fighting for property rights issues. They're fighting for election integrity, ballot integrity, election reform issues. So Convention of States activists are engaged in a lot more than just Convention of States. Convention of States gives them the foundation, teaches them how to do all this stuff, and then the Army, at a local level, they're going to engage on the things that they find important.
I'm here live in Philadelphia at the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. When you hear the phrase lives, fortunes, and sacred honor, these are the folks we should think of, those who anonymously gave their lives. Well, today you have a chance to volunteer. You need to volunteer for conventionofstates.com, the movement that's going to save the country. These folks are willing to step up and give everything. We need you to give just a little bit. Go to conventionofstates.com and volunteer today.